you doing, guys? Today I'm continuing the installation of the gear reduction steering from a 520 into my 857. Since my last video, I have done a couple things to get the progress kind of going, because I need to get this done as usual. I'm under the gun. But with that being said, what have I done thus far? Obviously, I took a piece of 3/4 inch bar stock, rough cut it to the size that I needed. I drilled 2 1/4 inch holes, one for the roll pin to hold the, I guess I'd call this a sun gear, but the big gear for the reduction steering. This hole's a 1/4 inch. It's actually for the cotter pin that runs through and keeps everything together. The distance from here to the end is 1.5 inches, which is the original gear reduction length to the lower steering rod. I did put it in the tractor and figured out that this is about where I need the tie rod plate to go. Obviously, that's the stock 857 center rod. Right there, you can see that this is quite a bit pushed back, and that's because of the bigger tie rods. I wanted to make sure that they were straight to the spindles. I thought I would have to cut this down in order to make it fit, but actually what I need is this entire piece. But the holes for the tie rods need to be moved in, because as it sits, and I'll show you in a few minutes, the tie rods, even in their shortest adjusted length, they're too long. So I need to move the center points, or this end of the tie rod, closer together, bringing them in. Hopefully that'll make the spindles curve in a hair, and then I can expand on both sides the connecting rods, or the end links, I should say, in order to get the wheels to sit straight. So I think I'll get away with that. I got this set up. I did make a pencil mark on the rod, so I'm just going to go ahead and tack weld that into place in just a second. The other thing I did, this is the lower center rod's mount on the steering block. It bolts on right here. It was bored for 3/4 inch, the same as the rod, but there was so much wear in this lower section that I decided to do what I have done on this channel a couple times, which is just to bushing the lower section of the steering tower. So I drilled this out from 3/4 to 7/8. I bought a 1 inch outer diameter bushing with a 3/4 inch inner diameter, chucked it in the lathe, turned it down to 7/8, so it fits nice and snug in there. The other modification I did, the grease fitting was originally a press-in grease fitting right here, 1/4 inch style. I had to get it out in order to drill it out 7/8. And in doing so, I kind of destroyed the grease fitting, which is no big deal, but the hole was exactly 1/4 inch, so I couldn't tap it 1/4-28 for a standard grease fitting. So I drilled it out for a 1/8 inch grease fitting, tapped it, and now I have obviously a bigger base style grease fitting, but it's there. Essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this bushing, I'm going to press it into place. Then what I'll do is I'll take a small drill bit, drill a hole through the bushing, down the center of this hole, through the bushing, and then what I'll do is I'll carefully tighten this grease fitting down with a little bit of Loctite. That'll hold it in place. The little hole in the bushing will match up, hopefully, as close as possible to the little hole in the grease fitting, and we'll be able to grease it. And that should take care of all that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and tack that piece into place. Then we'll take it out to the tractor. Well, I'll tack that into place, put the bushing into the lower section, drill the hole for the grease fitting, put it in the tractor, and I'll show you how it all looks. With everything loosely just put in place, you can see how I have the steering system set up. I got the tower lined up with the bolts. I have the little bushing in, got the center bar in. I tack welded the plate into place. I'm hoping you can take a look, see how those go in. I don't have enough. If you look at the, let me see if I can get the front end. You can see that the spindles are pointing forward right now. I don't have enough movement in the arms to bring those spindles into position, so because the tie rods are a little too long. So I'm going to do a couple things. I am going to re-drill the mounting holes in a little bit, so that'll suck the spindles in this direction. Also, what I think I'm going to do is on the insides, I'm going to nibble the length of the tube, the center tube, and take a little bit off the end link itself, or the tie rod end a little bit, so that way I can shorten the length of both of these link arms, and that will also bring those spindles into place. And once I do that, it's all set. It should be all set to go. I'm just going to start dialing in with some bushings here and there and some shims to make sure that all the gears hit each other just right and the spindles line up. I got some adjustment. I can tighten it all down. Everything should be just a-okay. All right, onwards. After about an hour, hour and a half's worth of work, I actually have everything in place, and I'm just starting to dial it in, put a couple shims here and there just to get the gears not to have any clash, and it's really coming out pretty good. I'm real happy with it. The stand is bolted in 2 places. I did add a bunch of shims to the back of this shaft, so that way there's very little play. There's almost no play in this. The lower section here with the bushing, it's perfect. This was always in good shape. There was nothing there. I just need to trim this bar back to the line. The connecting links, I guess you want to call it, the end links, the steering rods, whatever. I did, instead of re-drilling the holes on the bottom plate, what I did was I actually just took about 3/4 of an inch off of the center section, and I cut a 1/2 inch off of the actual end link, and that gives me enough play where I can go ahead and make the adjustments I need for the axle ends or the spindle ends to be straight. The next thing I need to do is I need to figure out where I want to cut this for the steering wheel. Now, I did on the original steering shaft over there on the floor, I did extend it because on 857 the steering wheel is real close to the tower, and this tractor is small enough as it is that I added about 3/4 of an inch to the original steering shaft in order to raise the steering wheel up. That one there is a stock location. So with that, I am going to make the adjustment to put the steering wheel back where it was for the little mule, so it's a little higher than stock. Let me get to that, and hopefully all the roughing is done. Oh, there is one thing I need to do. The lift arm, there is a bar that sticks out. I'm just going to need to trim that down a little bit because it does interfere with this gear right there. So I'll make a little clearance cut, and this thing should be pretty much all installed. I was a little premature in saying that this was completely ready to go, because after I stopped the camera, I thought, well, wait a minute, I have to make the spacers for the wheels. The 520 has this spacer which goes on the spindle, and as you can see right in the center, there's a shiny like line down the center of it. That's where the grease seal for the rim rides. This was missing one of them, and this original one is in pretty rough shape, so I decided to make some new ones. Essentially, I just ordered up a piece of tube, 1 inch diameter inner, 1 1/4 inch outer. I put it in the lathe just like this. After about, 20 minutes or so of just cutting them off, I was able to make a spacer and a spacer. Now, these are still available through Toro, but they're like $9 to $12 a piece. I got the piece of tube that you saw on the lathe for $4 with the shipping. So I went that direction. The other thing I did too is a little bit more of the same exact tube. I just cut this small little spacer to take up the little bit of space between the 520 front spindle and this original 857 axle. I just slip that on, and it gives me enough room to put the snap ring in, and then it'll keep it from moving around and kind of finishes it off, makes it look a little nicer, I think. Whew. All right, so with that, as you can see, I have my thrust washers all in place like a 520 would. I have another spacer up here for the snap ring. So this whole front end is pretty much roughed in and done. So I'm going to bring it back out to the tractor. I'm going to put everything into place. I've cut the steering shaft down already, so I'll have the steering wheel in place for the most part, so we can take a good clean look at that and we can move on. So after a little bit of this and a little bit of that, the gear reduction steering system from a 520 has been installed in my 857. Overall, it's all installed. I just have to do a couple quick little things. I do have to put the roll pin in for the steering wheel. I'll do that at a later date because I'm going to rewire the tractor. I don't want the steering wheel in the way when I'm putting the dash in and out. I have all of the new little grease boots on my end links here. I do have to tighten up these bolts, inner and outer, and put the cotter pins in. I'll do that after I get the rims and tires. And by the way, the rim and tire combo is at the powder coater. These are the original black rims that I had on this tractor. I stripped the tires off because I'm going to reuse the tires on the new rims that I have, the 520 rims. But those are off to the powder coater. Once those get back, I'll show you the install, or not the install, but the look of the tractor afterwards. Obviously, these 612s are going to go back into storage. My spacers in place, as I showed. My little top spacers are in place, and very little play in both of them. So that's effectively done. Everything is bolted nice and tight. My bushings are in the sun gear, and I have the cotter pins set. What else did we do? Oh, then I have the shaft collar is in place. It's set to go. And that's about it. Oh, and then, you know, tightened up the bolt, put in the cotter pin to hold that in. Here's where the lift arm got trimmed down a hair so it would clear this gear here, and I re-drilled the hole so you can put an implement back on the tractor. It was an easy install. It's just a matter of just doing some mathematics here and there just to get it straight. I will set the toe in and the toe out once I get the rims done and put on with the tires. But in general, the tie rods are, in general, it's pretty straight as it is. As you can tell, that one's pretty straight, and that one might be just tweaked a little bit in. But once I get the tires in place, then I can set that and everything will be a-okay and ready to go. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little update and build process for the installation of the gear reduction steering system in a mid-60 short frame tractor. As always, please subscribe if you haven't already. If you can give this video a thumbs up because you actually enjoyed it, please do so. And as always, hit the bell so that way you get notified of a new video being posted. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.